Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Ansley Redinger, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some of my tips and tricks for preparing for the workforce. These are just some things that I have learned over my 8 years of experience, and then on top of that, being a student for 6 years, um, 8 years. Anyway, so I wanted to share this with you guys. Hopefully you find some useful information um, in this presentation. So just a little bit of background about me. I did obtain my bachelor's in science and athletic training from Texas Lutheran University. I graduated in 2013. And then I accepted a GA position at Boise State University, working with track and field and cross country. There I received my master's in kinesiology with a biophysical emphasis. And my most recent degree was a doctorate in athletic training from Indiana State. Altogether, I have 8 years of experience, collegiate secondary education, and in outreach, which is my current position through St. Luke's here in Idaho. So we're just going to jump right into things, and my contact information will be at the end. So if you have any questions, then you can contact me if there are any questions or anything you need clarification on. So I kind of broke this up into 3 different sections. So before, during, and after. So things that you should be doing before an interview, during an interview, and then afterwards as you prepare to interview for a job, accept a job, and start that job. So these are the 7 things that we're gonna go into more detail on. And the first one is identifying your core values. So there's this giant list over on the right side of your screen. And on the next slide, I will have a little activity for you. You can pause the video and kind of try this out on your own. But one of the assignments that I had in my doctorate program was to identify my core values, and they're at the bottom: gentleness, altruism, and integrity. Altruism is like service or giving back, or giving, serving, anything like that would be altruism. So these 3 core values that you should choose, these should be core values that you cling to relentlessly. No matter the situation, you always revert back to these core values. So maybe it's that you're brave, or that you have lots of enthusiasm, or that you're a hard worker, or that you have lots of professionalism. Literally 3 things that are on the list that you feel like applies to you in any situation. You always act in this manner, and you always cling to these values. So here's the core values activity that I have. So what I did was I went through that whole list on the previous slide, and I circled any of them that applied to me. And then I started to narrow it down and tried to put myself in different situations and find myself, yes, this core value applies to the situation. No, this one doesn't apply. So I would cross it out, and then I would try to do process of elimination. So there are some questions there for you to help you really think about your core values, why they apply to you, why they're important to you, how you chose them. So that's just an activity that you can do on your own. The reason that core values are so important is because you should be doing research on your employer. So whoever you are looking for a job with, you should be looking at their values. So first question I have is, what is the mission, vision, values, and goals of the employer? Maybe it's that they just want to make a lot of money, or that they want to really emphasize this product that they have. Does that align with your core values? If it doesn't, maybe that's not going to be a good fit for you. Don't just apply for a job just because you're desperate for a job. Actually be intentional about where you're applying and interviewing, and recognizing if they do or do not align with your core values. So my second question is, do they align with your values and goals? So 10 years from now, do you see yourself in the same job? What do they do for their community? What do their benefits look like? Are there any red flags? So when you're talking with your network, literally anybody that's an athletic trainer. Are there any red flags that come up? Maybe the way they treat their employees or the way they view sick time or vacation time. Definitely ask around. Even reading reviews about different companies would be a good place to start. So make sure that you are researching your employer. Another thing to do before an interview is check your social media. Employers definitely screen your social media. Apologies for the dogs stomping around in the background, but employers are definitely going to be screening your social media, and the athletic training community is very small. So someone is going to know another person that's going to have access to your private account, and they're going to be able to see all of the things that you post. So one, do the things that you're posting align with your core values? That's always something to be mindful of. And then is there anything inappropriate in your pictures that you wouldn't want your grandma to see or your parents to see? Because if you don't want grandma to see it, then you probably don't want your future employer to see it either. So make sure that you clean it up. Go back to your core values. And then if it's private or public, like I said, somebody's going to have access to it, and they'll probably be able to see it even if you are having all of your, even if you do have all of your social media accounts set to private. I will share this presentation so that you guys can have access to it, because there are some links in the bottom of some of the slides with what's the word I'm looking for, with statistics and things of employers and social media and good useful information to have. Next thing to do is to review your resume and your cover letter. So I have an example of my current resume. There are a couple things missing, but overall clean, brief. It covers pretty much everything that I've done in my athletic training education career and in my clinical experience. So another thing that a lot of employers are going to be looking at is how clean and neat you have your resume set up. So are the dates all off? I mean, my dates are all in a nice straight line. Are all the margins the same? Is it clean? Is it easy to read? Things like that. So make sure that you go over your resume and your cover letter. Couple other tips that I have for your resume: leave out things from high school. Focus on your collegiate accomplishments. What clubs were you a part of? What honors and awards did you receive? GPA, I would encourage you to leave it out. Unless you had a 4.0 and higher, maybe include it. But if that's something, for me, my GPA was something that I always struggled with, but I didn't want to take away from all the amazing accomplishments that I had in my clinical experiences. So I did not put my GPA on any of my cover letters or resumes. So you can just leave that out. You want to do anything that you can to promote yourself and make yourself look like a strong candidate. You're not lying to them, but if they ask you what your GPA is, you can certainly share that with them if you feel comfortable, but don't feel like you have to disclose everything that you have ever done in your education and in your clinical experiences. So also be concise and use professional language. I have some synonyms over here, kind of resume power words that you can use on your resume and your cover letter to make you sound much more professional. Tips for your cover letter: make sure that you tailor it to each position and employer. Do not use the same cookie cutter one and just change the name, because chances are you're going to forget and you're going to put the wrong address at the top, or you're going to put the wrong name, and then you're going to look really silly whenever you send the wrong cover letter to the wrong position or employer. So double check all the things: the names, the dates, the position, all of the things. Double check it and triple check it. Elevate your language, use those power words, make sure that you're promoting yourself and that you're sounding professional. And then the biggest recommendation I can give is to have someone look it over for you. Don't just say, oh, it's good, I did spell check and grammar check and it looks good, it sounds good to me. Have somebody else read it. Have a preceptor or a mentor look over those for you and ask for feedback. I still do this with my resume. That's how I got it to look the way that it does so far. Talk with your references. This is my next big tip. So don't assume that your preceptor that you're with right now is okay with being one of your references. Make sure that they think highly of you and your skills, and that you actually worked as hard as you could, and that you showed up every day and you just grinded and got everything accomplished that they needed you to do. So give them an overview of what the job is that you're applying for. Maybe even discuss with them, like, do you see from the work that I've done with you, do you see this being a good fit for me? And kind of how you envision yourself in that position. Ask if they have any concerns or reservations. I will tell you that I had a professor that told me, when I asked for a recommendation letter, they said, well, you know, I am going to have to be honest. Again, my GPA wasn't super phenomenal. I didn't have a 4.0, and they were very blunt with me and said, I'm going to have to be honest with them. And I was like, do I want them to send this recommendation letter where it's probably not the most professional, or it's not going to set me up well or make me look like I'm in a positive light? So if they have those concerns, definitely have that discussion with them before just saying, hey, can you write me a recommendation letter, and you never see it and it's not a positive one. So always be discussing your with your references. And another thing I'll say about your references is that typically your reference list should be separate from your resume and cover letter. So just have a totally different document. Don't include that in your resume or cover letter. Make sure that's separate. Question prep. This is huge. There are a lot of things that they could potentially ask you. So the better prepared you are and the more practice that you've had with mock interviews, the better you will be. Know who you are, and knowing who you are and ask how others view you. That's going to be the biggest piece of advice I can give to you. Another thing that I really like to encourage is this thing called the 2-minute drill. My dad taught me this back in undergrad. So gosh, 9 years ago, he taught me the 2-minute drill. So it's broken up to 4 30-second chunks. The first 30 seconds is who you are. I'm Ansley. This is where I was born. This is a little bit about my family. This is what they do. This is where I've lived. Second 30-second chunk is all about your education. These are my degrees. This is where I went to school. Third 30-second chunk is all about your experiences. I've worked in education. I've worked in secondary setting. I've worked in the collegiate setting. I now work in outreach. And the fourth 30-second chunk is all about your goals. This is where I see myself. This is the setting that I envision myself working towards, and kind of sum up your resume in a quick 2 minutes. And I always practice this before an interview to make sure that I'm not taking 10 minutes to tell them who I am, because that takes away from the meat and potatoes of the interview. They really want to get to know the nitty gritty about how you work and who you are. Yes, obviously that is really important. So the 2-minute drill is simple to do. So make sure that you practice it too. Questions that they're probably going to ask you are things about your strengths. This can also sound like, why should we hire you? What sets you apart? What characteristics or attributes do you bring to the workplace? Those are all the same questions for tell me about your strengths. The weaknesses can also sound like, what areas of improvement do you have? For me, it's I'm a people pleaser. I can't say no. I'm still working on work-life balance. I don't do well with ambiguity, and I need to have clear details. You can always spin that to say, these are my weaknesses, but these are the things that I'm working on and that I recognize, and make it sound like you are aware of what your weaknesses are, but you're actively working to overcome those. They're probably going to ask you something about why do you want this position? Why this company? So that's when the research about that company is going to come into play. It'll be super handy. So make sure that you have done your research on what the ins and outs and the odds and ends of the position are. How do you handle stressful situations? How do you handle disagreement? How do you handle failure? Those will be some of the things that you might be asked. And then your goals, where do you see yourself in 5, 10 plus years? What are your career goals? And then there have been plenty of times where I've gotten tell us about a time questions. So give us an example of, tell us a story, give us a time that you struggled and overcame it, that you had a disagreement, or things like that. So be thinking of situations that you could elaborate on. Another thing that I want to share with you guys is this really awesome resource on the BOC website, and I wish I had known about it years ago, and it's something that I use to this day. So on the BOC website, if you click on the Athletic Trainers tab, you have all of these other tabs here. So click on CE Resources, so continuing education resources, and then you get all of these things down here talking about your continuing education. And if you don't know what that is, you need continuing education or professional development units to continue your licensure, your certification to practice. Under the CE resources, you will see this PDNA, so Professional Development Needs Assessment. This is a phenomenal resource where you can actually take an assessment that tells you what some of the domains you might be the weakest in. There's 3 different assessments that you can do. They're all fairly similar, but they're all very different. The length of some of them are definitely different. So I would encourage you to go to the BOC website, kind of play around with this, and then you could say in an interview that administration or evaluation is one of your areas of weakness, and these are the things that you're actively doing to promote those things or do better. And again, I'll share this because the links will take you directly there. Have questions prepared for your employer. During the interview, make sure that you have questions prepared for them, because if they say, do you have questions for us? And you're like, nope, I'm good. That doesn't show that you actually researched the program or the position or their core values and things like that. So these are some questions that I usually ask, and these are some things that might be useful to ask, especially in a COVID year. Hopefully we're transitioning out of it, but it's always something to be mindful of. So what is the future of this position? What does it look like? Is there tenure options? Especially thinking of COVID times, like, oh, this is a temporary position. Maybe that'll change things for you. Are there competitive pay or benefits? Is there anything responsibility-wise or that's not in the job description that I should be aware of? Are there opportunities for more responsibility or leadership? Is there chances that I could mentor somebody or become a preceptor? And then what are some things on your agenda that you have coming in the future that maybe I could elaborate on? Oh, if there's a project that they really want to do or some research that they really want to accomplish or publish, you could say, hey, I have experience with research in this specific area, and I think that I could really be an asset in helping you tackle that. And then what do the next steps for the interview process look like? They could come back and say, oh, we're continuing interviews, or we'll have an offer by the end of the week, so be close to your email and things like that. So make sure you ask and you're aware of what the next steps look like. So have those questions prepared for the interview. Last thing I can encourage you to do on the before side of an interview is to stay informed. So stay tuned to the NATA website, the NAWADA, or for me, the IATA website, the BOC website. There's always new information, especially that practice analysis that you could be doing. Connect with athletic trainers on Twitter and follow influential people. I would also encourage you that if you're not following these people, what are you doing to elevate your practice? Who do you have surrounding you that's going to help challenge you and push your limits and really see a lot of potential in you? So make sure that you are connecting with people that are like-minded and that are also going to elevate your practice. And then shameless plug, but use your student senate and use your young professionals rep. I am the YP rep for Idaho. So make sure that you're researching who those people are, because they and I are happy to help you, because we know that this can be a really daunting process and we want you to be as prepared and as comfortable as possible as you enter the workforce. So during, these are going to be some of the things we talk about. So we'll start out with timeliness is next to godliness. That's something that I have heard my entire life. I have a pet peeve of being late, so I'm usually 30 minutes early to everything. Don't be late, especially for an interview. Know where you're going, know where the address is, know what room it is. Don't come in all flustered. Oh my gosh, I was running across campus and now I'm all sweaty and flustered and my heart's racing and now I'm breathing heavy and I can't answer your questions without having to catch my breath. So be prepared and know where you're going. Communicate if you're going to be behind. Have somebody's contact number or email somebody that you can communicate with, especially if there's weather or car breaks down or something like that. Don't show up flustered and sweaty. Take a breather. That goes with don't be late and know where you're going. Reschedule if needed. There is no shame in having to reschedule if your car breaks down or you have a death in the family or something like that, something happens. Don't be ashamed to say, hey, I need to reschedule. And if they say no, they say no. Don't be too early. 15 minutes ahead is pretty much perfect. If I'm 30 minutes early, I'm going to sit in my car for 15 minutes and I'm probably going to be prepared and know where I'm going. So they have that 15-minute window to show up to the office or whatever it is. Next thing is your physical appearance. Dress to impress. Overdressing is better. Obviously, don't show up in a prom dress or with glitter in your hair or anything like that, but dress for the job that you want. I think you guys have heard that before. So dress to impress. Be well groomed. Make sure that your hair looks nice. Your facial hair isn't all crazy, that you don't have your cowlicks sticking up and things like that. No heavy makeup. Make sure that it's neutral. No gaudy jewelry. Just keep it simple and be tasteful. If you're like, oh, should I wear this? Is this appropriate for, the answer is probably no. So be tasteful and there you go. Next question. If you have to question if it's appropriate, answer is probably no. So don't wear it. Try something else. Take your time in responding to their questions. Interviewing can be super overwhelming, especially if it's your first time, but just take a deep breath, smile, and take your time getting your words out. So don't rush to get out a response. Take your time. If you have 30 minutes and you're taking your time with the responses, then they're going to say, wow, that person looked really confident. They knew what they wanted to say. They took their time. And think about what you're going to say before you just blurt it out. You also don't want to offend anybody or make anybody feel like you're better than them or anything like that. So take time to compose your thoughts. Repeat the question if you need to. That's a great question. My weaknesses are definitely something that I have considered and taken into account. Repeat the question, maybe rephrase it. Ask them to repeat it if you need to, and use those power words. So know the synonyms for that we used on the resume and cover letter and things like that. So make sure that you are using really professional and language that elevates yourself as a professional. Next thing is body language. So the way that I'm sitting right now, if you're sitting like this in an interview, they probably wouldn't take you seriously. So looking genuinely interested, sounding excited, keeping eye contact. If you are doing a Zoom or computer interview, notice that I've been trying to look at the computer camera as much as you can. I'm not looking at myself over here. I'm not looking at my notes or anything like that. I am looking into the computer because this simulates looking into their eyes and making eye contact. Don't slouch, sit up straight. Don't lean forward towards the interviewer because then it looks like you're super eager and it's kind of stressful for the interviewer too. So just sit up straight in your chair. Don't point at things, just keep your hands in your lap or folded on the table. Don't cross your arms. It looks like you're put out or you're just not happy to be there. Don't stare at something for too long, and don't fidget. I love to have pens or something in my hand at all time, but just keep your hands in your lap. Don't have anything around you that might be distracting or making noise and things like that. And then don't keep looking around the room, because then it looks like you're not interested. So just some random tips that I can give to you about body language. After your interview, so you crush the interview, they are telling you what the next steps are, you're super excited. These are some things, excuse me, you should be doing after your interview. So first thing is to follow up. Always, always, always send a follow up thank you. Send a thank you to everyone that was in the interview, maybe somebody that helped you navigate to the place that wasn't necessarily in the interview. They helped you around campus. Send them a thank you note. Proofread it, double check it. Again, you don't want to seem silly if you've interviewed for 10 different positions and you're saying thank you to Mr. Bob and it was actually Mr. Joe that you were supposed to send it to. So make sure that you proofread it. Always, always, always proofread. Send within 24 hours. Don't have an email drafted and ready to go and press send right after your interview finishes. Give them 24 hours, maybe later in the day. If you have a morning interview, maybe that evening after dinner, you send them your thank you note. KISS stands for keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple. You don't have to say much. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Blah, blah, blah. Keep it simple. And then follow up again after a week if you haven't heard anything. A week is usually a good time frame. If you hear back from them beforehand, awesome. Obviously respond, but don't send a follow-up email every day after your interview. That can be overwhelming for the interviewer. Interviewing windows can be really stressful for the people doing the interview, conducting the interview. So they don't want to lose your email because they're getting tons of other follow-up emails. So just one's good, and then follow up a week later. Negotiate, 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 negotiate. Always, always, always do this. If there's anything that you take away from this conversation, I want you to negotiate. And there are some links over here that are super useful. Research the job that you're applying for, the position. Use the NETA salary survey and the median salary within that area. Cost of living, things like that. Take all of that into consideration, so that you can advocate for yourself as best as you can. Find out what the other side wants. If they just want you to be there 365 days a year and they want you to work 60 hours a week, take that into consideration. So ask them what the details of the jobs are. You can totally ask them what the salary would look like. Other things are to not totally focus on the salary. There are other things that go into a position, like your benefits, your paid time off, vacation leave, sick leave, maternity leave, all of those things. Don't just focus on the salary. There are other things that you can negotiate. Continuing education budget, moving expenses, all of those things are things that you can negotiate in your contract. And then practice your rebuttal. There is a link down there for negotiation tips. Practice saying thank you. That's a very generous offer. However, I would like to discuss X, Y, and Z. Practice it. Talk about it with a mentor or somebody that you trust. Proofread it, obviously, and then send it back to them. Another thing about after the interview, what if they say no thank you, or we've gone a different direction? First thing you can do is just pick up the phone and give me a call or shoot me a text or shoot me an email that says, I feel so defeated and what do I do because this job I really wanted said no. There are lots of things that go into that, but and it can go a bunch of different directions, but absolutely come talk to me or talk to anybody that's got a rejection letter, because you are not alone. You are not the only one that's gotten rejected. Be patient and don't give up. Excuse me. Don't give up searching for the job of your dreams. Be persistent, obviously. Be professional, but keep working towards what you want. If that's attending seminars or attending conferences where you can continue to get more knowledge in the area that you really want to work, go get it, go do it. And then keep developing yourself personally and professionally. Don't stop just because you got your 50 CEUs completed and and you don't need to complete anymore. Keep going, keep learning, always keep growing and developing yourself. Here is my contact information. Another thing, shameless plug, the DAT for Indiana State is kind of wrapping up their application and interview process. But if that is something that you are curious about, a doctorate in athletic training, please contact me. I would love to talk about it. It was one of the most phenomenal experiences of my life, and I feel much more prepared as an athletic trainer and clinician than I feel like I did the 2 years prior to the program. So contact me. My cell phone number is right there, so feel free to shoot me a message. I'm happy to chat with you. So I hope you guys have a great rest of Nawada and that you learned something. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out.